recording. All right, we're live. Sunday show. I need like some intro
So,
music. I need some like the real talk shows. Have like intro music and guest. Have like audience clapping and stuff whenever you come in.
what you should do is take like from every podcast that has like an intro like theme song or whatever is like just layer them all on top of each other and then play that for like 2 seconds. It's
Oh
fucking
man,
loud ass
dude, that would
noise.
be like such ear rape. That reminds me of a couple of things. It reminds me of like one of the ones it reminds me of is like where they take the snippets from all the newscasts, like different new like local news shows from all around the country, and they're all basically saying the same script, and so they play it over each other, and it's like 100 different anchors saying the exact same thing. It's so fucked up.
Yeah, no, that's the Sinclair group is responsible for that. Like the same thing with all of our other corporations where it's like 10 companies own all of them. I'm pretty sure it's like six new media companies own all of like our news and shit. And like the way they started doing that was with our local news, and then eventually they picked up like CNN and NSNBC and like all of them other companies, right? Like, so you probably saw the one where like fake news is a danger to our democracy, but like they have a couple of other montages where they did the same thing, and it's like way more prevalent than you think.
Yeah,
The only time that's not what's going to be going on in your local news is if it's like actually a local news piece. But anytime they're giving like an opinion piece or talking about national news or anything of like larger concern, they're all going to be just saying the same fucking shit from a script.
Yeah, I think, and that's like a big generational thing. Like that's obviously like a big part of like the collective psyche of like the older generations who actually do participate. Is just getting into that kind of thing. I don't know. Like, what do you think about like Gen X? Because like I think the Boomers are very I think that like the CNN and Fox News is like very Boomer based. Like I think that like Alex Jones says the markets for those channels are like so old now. And obviously the millennials and younger generations are more like online or on social media. But like, what about Gen X? Like, where do they get their? I think they're just checked out. I think Gen X is just honestly checked out. But I don't know.
They're checked out for the most part, but a lot of them are like, they're holdovers from the boomer generation. Like they were able to actually get some of the wealth transfer that, you'd expect from, generation to generation. And like the boomers are the ones who really kind of fucked the economy up for us. And like they got a little bit of it, a lot of them were able to get their house and, they struggle financially and, they didn't really have to go to college if they didn't want to, but they have a lot of the cushy jobs. They're higher up in management and shit like that, but they really didn't accomplish anything. They didn't really do anything, and a lot of them just vote Democrat.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to make a lot of like generalized statements about a whole generation. But I definitely think there are a lot of trends, and definitely the news media is one of them.
I would agree. I would go as far as say that like the majority of people are checked out. Majority of people are checked out. Like I was talking to my mom about this. I was saying that like like only 3% of the U.S. population participated in the first Civil War, and everybody else kind of just like went about their business,
Yeah.
ignoring things. And like I'd say that, or I would imagine that 3% of the population is extremists, like whether or not it's left wing or right wing.
That's a funny take because like a lot of the militias, I know there's at least one that are called the three percenters. Like that was, and it's also said that that's the percentage of the population needed to have a revolution, right, or to topple the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing. So that's a
Yep.
very interesting statistic. I need to start a militia, join one.
Uh, you could probably join Patriot Front.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of like larger ones, and there's some local ones. I know that there's a handful. There was a Vice documentary about one in Georgia, and I think it was the three
Oh.
percenters or something like that.
Yeah, dude, go hook up with them. Go shoot something.
Hell yeah.
Kill a government official. I guess. Why not?
So a little. I didn't have anything too crazy in particular this week, but something actually did just happen like today. So I went on like a little bit of a tirade last night, posting like just Jew posting. I think I had started out just on Wikipedia, just like just looking up. I was just curious about European history in general, and I came across. I was curious in the history of UK. I was like, I'm just gonna go like look about like London. Let's look at the history of London as a city and like where did it come from, all this stuff. And it was like the Roman, of course, it was like the early, like the fucking what do they call it, the Bretons and the Anglo Saxons and stuff. And then it was the Roman territory, and then it got into one of the kings who, and it talked about the Jews being there, and it talks about them being expelled. And so I went over to that article and I started reading about the expulsion of Jews, and then I also started reading about the whole history. It's like the whole 109 meme, but I actually looked at it. I was looking at the timeline. I thought it was very interesting. So I started sharing that and stuff. But the whole reason I bring it up is because this guy reached out today who was like, man, he's like, I would totally like comment and like your posts and stuff on about the Jews if it was not public. And he's like, I'm in Europe and we just don't have the freedoms that you guys have in the U.S. And he's like, there's people been arrested here for like talking about that shit and denying. And I was just like, wow, man, like that really puts shit in perspective. Like this dude's like reaching out, just like I fucking, I support what you're doing, but like, I can't. Like, it's crazy, man. That shook me up.
Yeah, no, I've seen a bunch of videos of people just getting like, random knocks on their door because of like tweets that they've made. Like there was like a couple years ago, I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head. He's like more of a political figure at this point, like public speaking and shit like that. But like he had taught his pug to do the Nazi salute when he said "Stand Heel," and like he got a knock on his door from the police. Like you can comment about like the amount of rape from like the Muslims over there, and like you'll get a knock on your door, and it's really sad because they're totally willing to ignore the actual issue that the person's bringing up, like real crime, the kind of shit that you would want to actually get prosecuted and, like attended to in favor of like, this guy said something online and like, we don't like that. So we're going to come and arrest you. Like Europe's the same country that puts fucking like, their police officers in uniforms that have like rainbows on them. Like they cover their police cars in fucking rainbows to be in solidarity with
the gay police, like we're the straight, like they just arrest straight people.
Right? Why not though? You got thought crime going on if you're not willing to put a dick in your butthole.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see the same sort of thing happening here, though, to a lesser degree. It seems like Europe, like every country has something that you should heavily dislike about it. Like, in Europe, they don't have any guns and like their police officers like are totally in favor of, the left-wing agenda. And now over here, we're starting to see like, USPS comes out and endorses Joe Biden. It's like, I thought you guys were a government organization. Why are you in favor of, a particular politician? Are you supposed to be apolitical and like do your service to, the public? What made you for? I don't really give a fuck if you want, Joe Biden to win. That's your business, but you don't need to tell all of your employees like that's what we're doing and then pass around internal memos about how you're going to get a kickback for it.
Yeah.
Like, a police office, I don't know what the proper word for it is, but like the NYPD
precinct
came out in favor of Trump. Mm-hmm. And it's like, go Trump and everything, but like, aren't you just supposed to enforce the law? Why are you endorsing political candidates? Like, I'm not in favor of all of these, major companies, and now even, government institutions are starting to endorse politicians. Why?
Well,
why you do that?
I've thought about that a lot, like especially when it comes to like the ballots and like the elections and all the people that are supposed to be neutral parties. Like it's hard for me to imagine someone who is a neutral party, and I guess the idea is that they're not expected to truly believe neutral, but it's about separation of church and state, so to speak. It's about separation of like what you believe you're supposed to be playing and I just like. I feel like to the extent to which our country and to which in the modern day people are like demoralized and so void of any virtues of like integrity, self-respect, any of this stuff is all gone. So like it's just such a shit show. It's just everybody stabbing each other in the back, like everybody playing angles. It's just, and so with all that in mind, I wanted to like bring up this point that you made me think of, which is like that Trump's been saying like the ballots, like the shit's so fucked up. And there was that story this week of the ballots being found, like the military ballots in Pennsylvania or whatever, that were like pretty much all for Trump were just thrown away. So it's just like, man, this is like, what do you even do about that? It's crazy.
Yeah, no, and that's like the shitty thing too is like, they're trying to swing back to the in-person voting thing, but like ballots still go missing when we do that too. There's no integrity anymore in our elections. And like that's like the funny thing is like I'll talk to a lot of conspiracy theorists and they'll be like, yeah, 9/11 was an inside job, like the Iraq war is about like, such and such a reason or whatever, like the CIA trafficked cocaine into the black communities and like all these different conspiracy things, and then they're like this year you need to vote for Donald Trump though because he's the one who's going to save us. And it's like, you have a lot of the people who are like MAGA is actually mega make Israel great again because like they got so many kickbacks from this shit. It's like if you think that our elections are real, you're kind of in this retarded place. I don't know how else. Like, how do you see all of these conspiracies and all of these like other things where everything is just bullshit and the one thing that you think is real is our election?
Yeah. I think there's obviously some important angles and some symbolism, if nothing else. But yeah, that's where I was going to go with it, which is that like I just don't think that there's any way that you can actually expect there to be integrity when it comes to an election, and beyond that, like you look at the popular vote versus electoral college, and beyond that, it's just I don't know, like it's just like one vote, out of this mass. It just doesn't feel like it's even related at all, and the place that I wanted to take that was that what we should be doing is more focus on more focus on local elections, more power at the local level. Of course, like it's a constant effort of trying to decentralize and trying to take away the federal power. That's our ultimate fight. Is like, but again, like by like they say about the election, by people voting, they then almost consent to the system, and they're like, oh yeah, like I support the federal. It's just I don't know. That was a whole rant, but some of my
No,
angles.
and I've always been kind of sympathetic to like, if you participate, then you're offering your consent. But like, either way, you don't have much of a choice in the matter. Like, if you don't vote, then nothing. You still have to live under the system. It's not like you get like a get out of jail free card type of a deal with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I don't know. I do plan on voting. Like I think it just has like a little bit of a symbolism to it. Like the fact that I'm willing to go through effort on behalf of the country and stuff like that. Like I don't know. There is a little bit to be said for it, but of course that's not.
Yeah, you might as well vote. It's not going to hurt you.
Yeah, and I think, but I think the biggest thing is that that's not where it should stop. Like you don't just, every 4 years you vote, and I think that's what it is for a lot of people. It's like their token of like you participated, now you don't have to worry about it. You either get to complain or do whatever for the next 4 years, but I don't know.
You can vote every 2 years. You know that there's like another period where we
Yeah, like
re-vote in like people into the House and the Senate and
yeah,
everything.
midterm Senate, and that's a challenge for each person, and for myself to get more involved at those local levels, and I am trying to. Um,
Right.
so
And that's like that was my biggest gripe with like the person that I was talking to yesterday. We got into this big argument about whether or not Trump's a fascist and shit, and I was kind of trying to like break it down for them. Like if you're so terrified that like we'd elect a fascist, like literally Hitler into the office of the president, then why are we giving the federal government so much power, right? Like it should work in reverse. Like we've legalized weed in all of these states, and like at any time the feds could come in and arrest all of those people because like on a federal level it's still a crime. It doesn't happen, but they could do it. So
yeah,
like we have these laws on a federal level that like somehow are more powerful than the state and local laws. Work in reverse. Like we shouldn't have these federal laws unless it applies to like people traveling in internationally or like in regards to international concerns, right? Like that should be something that's like on a bigger level, like we as America, and this is how we as America operate with these other countries. Then when it comes to like your county, state, like they have their own laws that are completely independent of that, but we don't do it that way anymore. We were seeing a bunch of people getting arrested and then just re-released because the defense attorney for that county was just dropping all the cases because like, oh well, they're protesting for Black Lives Matter, and because I got voted in and I'm sympathetic to that cause, like I'm not going to prosecute them, and they'll get arrested by the feds. It's like, well, how long is that going to take before it turns into like we see over in Europe? If you say something against the government, like the feds are going to come and arrest you. Like we don't give a fuck about your state and local laws. Like the same thing could happen with our red flag laws that we see right now. You hear a bunch of like sheriffs coming out and saying we're not going to enforce these bullshit rules about trying to take your guns. It's not going to stop the feds.
yeah,
It's not going to stop the feds from coming and taking your guns. So like if we elect Biden, he'll just be like, all right, well, en masse, everybody's now red flagged. You're all fucking delusional, racist, white Nazi, hate KKK, whatever's.
yeah. I mean, the whole thing makes it obviously very complicated. Like you have so many layers and so many pieces, and so many players, so much corruption. But I'm like, I guess I just wonder, like, what would be what would be the ideal like distribution of power? Like what? Obviously, I think like the in general we can say that the Fed needs less power. Like on a federal level, on a national level, like I feel like there should be, really top level things like maybe defense and trade. But what happens when you do that? It's like the classic story. If you say, oh, we give the Federal Reserve power for defense. Well, then they're going to pull their strings and then be like, oh, well, here's an international situation that needs It's like they use times of conflict and war and fear to take power. That's one of their main methods of self-propagating, I guess. Um, I don't know.
The ideal thing would be just like on a community level, and then you defer to a larger organization when like you can't handle it, right? So
Yeah,
like my neighborhood would be its own community, and we'd like decide how we want to run things and like what the rules are. Like, well, they do the same thing with like gated communities. Like your house can't be this color, your grass has to be like this certain
yeah,
strain, and it can't be this tall. Like they get overzealous with it at times, but it should operate on that level. Like this is the kind of community that we want, right? And like if some kind of like BLM mob shows up to the community, then you defer to a larger organization, right? But like neighborhood watch type deals, like we have all kinds of like clubs and organizations that used to actually like fund and be a part of. Like community organization used to be a huge thing in America. I was reading about that a couple of years ago in a book called Bowling Alone, how over time like less and less people want to get involved in the community that they're in, and they think a lot of it has to do with like the diverse changes in America. It's the same reason that Amazon came out and said we enforce diversity so that like our employees won't unionize against us. Like, can you imagine how powerful a union within Amazon would be?
yeah.
So like the more that you feel like you can't trust your own neighbors, the less likely you are to participate in things that like keep your community strong.
And that's the fundamental ploy of those who would seek to conquer or to divide or to weaken a nation would be to
Yeah,
enforce
it's textbook divide and
yeah,
conquer.
absolutely, absolutely. Um,
So like when I get online and like you don't really see this so much on Facebook, but like every once in a while on 4chan, like you'll get somebody who'll post like, fuck Europeans, like they don't have guns, like they have all these issues and stuff like that. And it's like, why do you want to create division amongst the people who are, sympathetic to your cause? Like, why are you gonna have this purity test, right? Like, I'm not exactly white, but like I don't want white people to all get wiped out. Like, I like diverse nations, right? Like, I'm a Native American. Like, I've seen what that does firsthand. Like I see it in my own community. Like we can't speak our own language. Like all of our cultural practices are like getting just like forgotten, and it's sad.
yeah,
Like it's a bunch of drunks and drug addicts out here, and like we're not going to be around for too much longer. And I don't want that to happen to other people. That's
yeah,
why I'm sympathetic to that sort of cause, because like I've seen what that does to communities firsthand. But like they'll be like, well, you're not white though, so like, fuck you, you're not part of our group. And again, it's like, why do you want to create this division amongst people who are, your cause? Even the left eats itself. They say that the left eats itself. Like J.K. Rowling said that Hermione was actually black, and Dumbledore was secretly gay, and like everybody's applauding. But the second she says that like a man isn't really, or a woman can't, or a man can't be a woman, because she's a rad femme or whatever, or what is it? Trans
train.
exclusionary radical feminist.
Jesus Christ.
Like all of a sudden she's no longer allowed to be like supported anymore, and everybody hates her. Like putting up a sign in Europe that says "I heart J.K. Rowling" is hate speech, and you get arrested for it. You know, it's like they really play both sides of the field, and they just don't want anybody to feel like they have a community or a group that they can be a part of.
Yeah,
Like that is your biggest fear, is that we all realize, this is a big play, it's a big distraction, and then we all realize like, hey, fuck these elite people.
yeah, yeah. That's definitely like the end goal. And a couple of comments, like number one, like just the whole J.K. Rowling thing definitely attests to like the polarity and the extremity of like leftist thinking, which is like you can't really take a middle stance, you can't have a conversation. It's basically like get with the narrative, which is like totally degenerate, and like push all of this shit and just be totally into it and brainwashed, or else like you become the enemy. So, and I like to hope that that's working against them in the long run, but that's a whole other discussion. Um, one thing I was gonna say too
Oh,
is
did you ever hear that day of the pillow meme? Where they're like, we need to kill all boomers, even though they vote Republican. Like they vote in the wrong Republican, so we should just like kill boomers and we'll be better off for it.
yeah. What's funny is
I
like
don't know.
there's a couple of different points with the left that I almost want to like I want to instigate because it'll work in our favor. Like if the left ever starts like going, what's funny is like they love like parading around cities and like protesting and rioting and shit. And honestly, like we should almost encourage it because like once they do start to say like those like let's go to the suburbs and like let's go to the rural areas, like that's where it ends. Um,
No, it doesn't, because we've had instances already of people just being inside of their house, holding a gun in the window, just watching, and they get arrested, right?
yeah,
I can't remember where it was, but it was really recently. Some guy was just like they were outside of his house, they were threatening to burn his house down to like kill his family, like telling him like I'm gonna. And this isn't the Kyle and Aaron meme or whatever, where you had those two boomers in their gated community, standing on the lawn with guns. Like this guy was just inside of his house holding a gun. Somebody called the police and like he got arrested. So
yeah,
it's not even really about defunding the police. Like I think it was Alyssa Milano had come out in support of like defunding the police, but then some kid nearby was just like out in his yard, like shooting squirrels with his like airsoft gun or whatever. And she called the police. They had like 9 squad cars there. Like the fire department was there. They had a fucking helicopter. Like it's it's not about defunding the police for them, at least in the grand scheme of things. Like they want the police demoralized, they want the police to quit, and that makes civil war, the potential for a civil war, more likely, because it comes down to it when like people are like blocking off streets and there's starting to be these gun skirmishes. Like the police are going to be like, I don't give a fuck,
yeah,
I don't give a fuck anymore.
yeah. I don't know. It's crazy to think like how it might play out and like what the angles are and if they're actually just trying to full on create civil war and destruction or like what the angles are. Um,
Oh, they are. That's exactly what they're going for right now, and it's is it death by 1,000 cuts is probably their strategy when it comes to like rioting for over 100 days, right? Like they're not doing anything too extreme, and they're burning a lot of places down. People have died, right? But like it's not like Oklahoma City bombing levels of crazy.
yeah,
It's not terrorist attacks like fucking 9/11 levels of crazy. So they'll break down the morale of the police over time, and eventually they'll just stand down. Like there's been police recordings of them saying, like, "Oh, so and so just got shot" or whatever, and they're like, "Well, what do you want us to do about it?" The dispatcher will straight up say that, like, "What do you want me to do?"
yeah. Atlanta, that happened. Like there were like several. What there like several zones in Atlanta that were just like fuck it. Whenever the that Wendy's thing happened, the Wendy's shooting. It's just like it's fucking
Well, that's like
crazy.
probably like unless you're still watching the live streams daily of like these riots and shit like that, like a lot of people are under the assumption that they've basically toned down because the media just won't report on it at this point. But like I've seen pop-ups like of Chaz all over the country now, like in all of the cities that they're rioting. Like Chaz came back in Portland, like they reset it up, and like nobody's talking about that.
Yeah,
And I think, like you said, it happened in Atlanta too. They had sort of a Chaz pop up. It happened in New York. They had sort of a Chaz pop up,
yeah.
but the media won't address it. As far as everybody's concerned, it's not really happening. Like I couldn't even tell you how many deaths have been directly caused by the riots at this point. I think the funniest thing for me has been watching the media like tuck its dick into its own ass about like how the riots helped like slow the spread of COVID, and like a lot of the majority of cases that we're seeing now are like from the 16 to like under 30 range.
Yeah,
It's like, huh, that's the same demographic that's out there starting fucking street fires and flipping cars and shit.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty comical that all the hypocrisy when it comes to the protests and versus like Trump rallies or versus like just normal gatherings stuff like that. It's fucking absurd. It's definitely all the same. It's the same game with the media. Like it's all the same themes like that we hit on. Like the media doing their thing. Um, you know, I guess as far as people go, it's usually either like for the most part, it seems like people who are like the crazy left versus like the mostly impartial people who just don't participate. Um, Like those are some of the main angles. Like who are the players? Like I like to try to map it out because like once you map it out, then like it's the same thing. Like it's just you see the big picture at that point.
Who's involved is what you're
Well,
asking?
like if you could generalize like what some of the angles are, I think you've got like in general you've got like the the majority of people who just kind of tune it out or whatever until it like directly affects them, and like including like a lot of conservatives. You've got you've got like the essentially the insane left, and then you've got like the media and the elites who push the leftist narrative. Like that seems to be, I mean, and it kind of boils down to left versus right at some point, I guess.
1 second. Cigarette.
You just chain smoking
Well, I
today?
mean, like the best way to look at it, I would imagine, is to like break it down from the ground level and then go up from there. So like you have Black Lives Matter, you have Antifa, you have a bunch of like college students who aren't exactly radicalized, but they're sympathetic to the cause. They're just like the useful idiots. They're the ones who, as soon as the police start firing their rubber bullets, like run away. As soon as they hear a gunshot, they're gonna run away. They're there to legitimately protest like peacefully. You have the counter protesters who show up in some instances who are like totally pro Trump. You have the counter protesters who are there who are just like, not in my community, but I'm not even voting for Trump. I'm just tired of your bullshit.
Yeah.
You have the police. Um, After that, then you could go up to like the DAs who keep letting all of these people go. Uh, the federal government who's actually coming in and arresting these people. And then you could go as so far to say that like we have foreign actors, like some of these I don't remember if you remember when Trump like signed that executive order that was concerning Chinese foreign actors and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like we've had a couple of arrests like directly related to that. I think in the NYPD they said that one of their sergeants or somebody who was like a little bit higher up in the hierarchy for the police like was a Chinese agent. So like we have foreign, psyops that are coming in, like maybe all of this, like the Yuri Bezmenov thing, like, is this coming from Russia? Is like all of this propaganda coming from Russia? Is it coming from China?
Yeah.
Then you have the possibility of like, maybe this is all George Soros, like their Soros back kind of shit, this is Bill Gates because like he wants the virus to be as endemic as possible. He can like roll out his fucking. It's like the big thing though is like follow the money, find out where these people are getting funded from.
Yeah, I saw we rewatched a really good documentary. It's called Thrive, and it kind of does like a follow the money bit. That's pretty good. Like not only the Rothschilds, pretty obviously Rothschilds, but also the Rockefellers and the Morgans, and as far as some of the big players. And yeah, you make a good point. Like there are a lot of angles. It's a really complex picture. Um, I guess the thing is like that I come back to is kind of like I don't know, like what as far as like reconciling that back with your daily life, and like how to interact with that. Like, what are some like legitimate things that we can do to like I don't know, like to balance it, to stay involved, to take breaks from it, but also to help. Like that's what I'm more focused on.
I think our primary concern right now should be like kickstarting our economy. Like if people have jobs to go back to, like it's like I think I said that last time. Like at the end of the day, most people just want to go to work, and it doesn't really matter. They can bitch and complain all they want, right? Like Trump just like signed a bunch of things that said that like they can no longer teach critical race theory within the
Yeah,
federal government.
yeah,
I'm hoping that we start to see that trickle down, especially to like the red states, so we can have more situations where like Goodyear is doing that. But like really what we need is more right wingers to like start actually standing up for themselves, because like time and time again, like Alex Jones gets taken down, like Stefan Molyneux gets taken down, like Vincent James gets taken down, like all of these people who are right wing speakers keep getting taken down, but like there's no public outcry about it. Nobody says anything. They had millions of viewers, and like nobody's going to YouTube and being like, what the fuck, like at some point, like everybody's like, what's that clip from Falling Down? Have you seen that clip where the guy's like at the restaurant or whatever, and he's like, can I get such and such an item? And breakfast is over at 10:30, and he looks at the clock and it's 10:27, and he just like goes on a fucking rampage because he's done.
yeah,
Like when is our breaking point? is our breaking point. And I'm not advocating for like a violent reaction because we don't need to be violent. We just need to stand up and say something. When are we going to do that? You know, like the thing that made me happy today was like looking over at the UK, like they're protesting and the lockdowns, like hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people showed up not wearing masks, and they said we're tired of this bullshit, you know. And a lot of them got arrested. They were getting hit by the police with batons, shot out with tear gas. It looked like the opposite of a BLM riot in so much as like they were actually peaceful about it. They were just like, we're fed up, you know, and we don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that we need in communities, you know, like, you know, when you find out that they're pushing anal sex on your kindergartner the second that they get into school, you don't like show up to the next PTA meeting, something about it, like you're part of the problem, you know. Like I think I saw a meme that said like you get what you tolerate. It's not you get what you deserve. You get what you tolerate.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like, I don't think of it so much as like you have to like stand up and do some radical thing. Yeah, for sure. It's just about gradually getting more and more involved, more and more concerned, more part of the conversation. Like doing shit like this, just like touching base, getting the ideas out there, like continuing to advance the discussion. Like those are just pieces of it. Those are pieces of the effort, and you're absolutely right. It's what we tolerate. Um, so
Just fucking say something. Like I went to my employer because like in our state we're basically open. You know, our Supreme Court of Wisconsin turned over, you know, the governor's rule where we were going to keep our businesses shut down. They said no, that's like unconstitutional. We're opening back up, but like we still have to all wear masks. And I went to my employer the other day and I told him, I was like, you know, like these are the statistics about like, you know, the infections and like the number of people who die and go critical and like all this other stuff. Like I don't want to have to wear a mask at work, I told him, you know. And like it didn't change anything, but like they heard me, they had to listen to me.
yeah, and that's
And
where
it's
that's where
like
it starts. Yeah,
if more people after me came up and said something to them, things would change at some point because they'd be like, holy shit, this is like, you know, 70% of our employees don't like this policy that we have. Like maybe we should change it before, you know, they start fucking striking and not showing up to work anymore, all that kind of shit.
yeah. So back to like Corona, like what do we think the timeline is? Like I haven't been following too closely with like the vaccines and stuff, but like you know, do you think it's
Well,
gonna? Yeah,
apparently Johnson and Johnson has a vaccine that's reaching its final stage of testing and everything. But we in the United States have four vaccines, potential vaccines that are like reaching their final stages of trial and everything. But even pro-vaxxers, right? Like I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I don't get vaccinated, but like, you know, I don't think it causes autism or like, you know, turns your kids into retards or anything like that. Like, you know, generally I feel like vaccines are safe. I just personally don't get vaccines because like it feels like a fucking hassle to go do it. I'd rather, you know, get drunk again or something like that.
very nice.
When you look at the history of vaccines and you find out the quickest we've ever made a vaccine, it took 3 years. We've only known about this like globally, as far as I can tell, since like March. I don't know when they called it a pandemic, but it hasn't been that long. And sure, we've thrown a bunch of money at it, but it takes time to vet these things. You need to do trial runs of it. You know, you test it in, you know, a small animal, then a larger animal, then in like a group of 10 people, 100 people, whatever. But we're rushing this vaccine to
Yeah,
be out. And I think Trump has been saying like, you know, we're going to have it before the election. It makes me wonder, like, how safe is that? You know, like, I don't want to take your fucking, you know, radiated rape shot in my arm just because, like, you tell me that it's safe. Like, I don't believe that.
yeah,
I believe the flu shot is probably safe because, you know, we've had shots every year for a long time. Like, we understand that. We know how it works. Like, we know what to put into it. We know how to tweak it and all that sort of shit. But we don't know enough about the coronavirus to make a vaccine for it, as far as I'm concerned. And like, we definitely won't know what's going to happen when you en masse inoculate everybody with like this shit that you just cooked up in a couple months.
yeah. So yeah, it's definitely still up in the air with vaccines, and we'll see how it plays out. But like vaccines aside, like what? I mean, obviously there is more push for opening back up. People are like, we have like, I don't know what the curve looks like either, but you know, hopefully we can kind of like, you know, just continue to kind of mediate that, like kind of like, yeah, maybe have like levels of like, have like preset levels of like, almost like, how do you say, criticality, to where it's like, okay, we can open back up a little bit. Oh, the curve's getting bad again. Let's go down a level. Like I think that's something that we can kind of maybe figure out, you know, going forward? And it could be like
Well,
on a local level. It could be based on local jurisdictions for
when I,
sure.
when I talk to people about it and when I really like lay things out for them as far as the coronavirus is concerned, like they usually admit to me like, "Oh yeah, well I already feel like I had it once." It's like, well then you're immune to it again, at least for a certain period of time, and you already know that it's something that's not going to kill you. When we compare like because that's like the thing is like you have to ask to get tested, right? Like you go to the hospital and you say like I want to be tested for coronavirus. I think I have coronavirus. They'll test you for it, right? But
Yeah.
then there's a bunch of people who are walking around who probably got infected with it. And they just walked through it. They laid down for a couple of days and they're like, wow, this is really shitty. Like I feel fucked up. And they got better and they moved on with their lives. Like how many people has that happened to? We have the actual test for coronavirus, and then we have another test for antibodies, which means that like you've been infected and your body is now producing all of these things to like prevent that from happening again. You fought it off.
Right.
And the number of people who have antibodies far outnumbers the number of people that we've tested positive. So as far as we can tell, it's basically already spread all throughout the entire world. Everybody's got infected with it, or at least had some form of contact with it. And now we've reached that, what was that phrase that they were using? Herd immunity.
Right.
Herd immunity is what we've already reached. It's just a shitty flu. The flu kills people every year, like cancer kills people every year. And like, that's not going to stop you from, putting a cell phone next to your dick, lowering your sperm count. Like nobody's really concerned about that sort of shit. And I don't think it's worth crashing the global economy over.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Like,
That is
like I
that.
said, like I said earlier, like the information that I was looking at back in like January, February, March, what I was seeing really concerned me, but now we have more data.
Yeah.
Now we know more.
I think that's a challenge for myself is to kind of get more up to speed with that and really start digging again and seeing what the new outlook is looking. I've kind of just been going along with it and whatnot, but that's definitely a challenge to myself and to start making more research and making more posts, spreading that information. And if we get to the point where it's like, yeah, we feel like we're ready to open and they're like really and the bad actors are trying to keep it closed or trying to sabotage, then that's where we can start to look to have that conversation and even protest if it comes down to it. Um,
The
so
way I was kind of looking at it is it started out as this Chinese psyop that was like anti-American because like that's where it's really blown up the most. That's apparently where we have the most cases, even though we test the most. We have more people than a lot of other countries, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's like really good reasons why we've had a lot of cases and a lot of deaths to coronavirus. Like we're massively obese in this country, right? Like they were putting infected people inside of nursing homes for whatever reason, right? So like there's reasons why we have a higher death rate and a higher number of infections than a lot of other countries. But in the states where they've opened up, that entire thing where they were saying like, things are gonna go crazy now. It's you shot yourself in the chest or whatever. Like that didn't happen. Everybody goes to the bars all weekend now, not wearing a mask. Like Tinder stayed open the whole time. Like everybody basically goes about their business as normal around here at this point.
yeah,
Like nothing bad happened.
that's a good
Nothing
point.
bad happened.
So moving past coronavirus, back to the election. What are you feeling and what are you thinking about the election and how it's gonna go down?
Well, I find it really hard to believe that the Democrats aren't going to try to pull some funny business. Like you said, we've found ballot boxes in ditches just hidden away. They'll probably try to start some of them on fire. The USPS is really pushing Biden because like they're going to get a massive kickback for it. Like they were told, we're not going to give you any more money by Trump because like you don't need it, and they said we can handle this, and that was like at the amount of money they were making now, but they know full well they're going to get a massive kickback if Joe Biden gets into office, so there's going to be a lot of fuckery with that. So we have all of these people who are doing mail-in voting. There's the absentee ballots, and then there's the universal mail-in voting has been instituted in some states. I think Pennsylvania was one of them where they're just en masse sending out ballots to people who didn't ask for them.
Yeah.
And we're going to see a Trump landslide on November 3rd. That night, Trump will win. They'll come out and say Trump has the most votes right now. Like he took all of these states, and then we're going to wait the course of 2 weeks. They're going to be like, well, we're still counting more ballots. And like, oh, now Joe Biden's edging closer to taking Florida. Oh, now Joe Biden's edging closer to taking Wisconsin. He's going to have all of the swing states magically, even though I don't understand how it takes that like a 2 week period to count that many ballots. But They're really, really, really pushing hard for the idea that it's going to take them 2 weeks to count all the ballots and like to get all the ballots in. Like there's going to be a million people who send in their votes at the very last minute or something like that. But I predict that you're going to see a Trump landslide. Joe Biden's going to edge him out, and then both sides of the field are going to say this election is bullshit. This election is fraudulent. It's
That's
been
interesting.
funny to me to see how quickly everybody got over the whole, Bernie thing. I really feel like he was the populist for the left. Like he is the left's version of Trump, and the DNC fucked him twice.
Yeah, and so I think it's interesting that you think that Joe Biden is actually going to come back. Like I guess like I am pretty solid. Like I don't even study what the mainstream narrative and what the mainstream statistics look like. I haven't watched the polls, but I perceive Biden as not having a chance, even with Kamala. But I don't know. So I'm
I don't
thinking
think
that
it's going to be a legitimate win. I think they're going to do some finagling and some fucking cheating, and that's how he's going to win.
well, yeah, I think it's going to be a Trump. I think it's going to be a Trump landslide. I think that they're going to try some shit like that, but ultimately, I think that this is the chance for the DNC to just collapse. I think this is the end of the neocon era. Like obviously Trump was like the first like non-neocon in a while, and then you've got yeah obviously it should have been Bernie, and you got like Bernie, Warren, Yang, and Tulsi, like all of these like non-establishment. And I think that this is like the final straw for like the current status of the DNC. I think it's going to crumble. Trump's gonna win, and it's gonna like the DNC is just like they're gonna get frustrated, and the whole left, like down to the level of the people, they're like we're just like for so long they've been fuck Trump, fuck Trump, fuck Trump, but now they're like, how did we not beat Trump? Oh, it's the DNC, it's our own party that needs to be reestablished. So I think that's gonna be the chance for them to like really like rebuild. So that's my prediction. Yeah, there could be a lot of factors, a lot of chaos, a lot of fuckery, a lot of violence along the way. Who knows?
Well, I already think that we're seeing a major transformation in the Democratic Party with people like Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
You're right. Yep.
even Tulsi Gabbard. Not Tulsi Gabbard. Kamala Harris. Right? Like we're seeing the shift in there. I think it was in some eastern coastal state or Texas possibly, but somebody was running for sheriff and they were actually like a transgender Satanist or
Was
something
that
like that. But
real?
they
I
put
thought that was
R
a
next to the
joke.
name and they ended up getting the nomination
I saw that. I thought it was a total joke.
because people aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
The only reason that that's possible is because people simply don't pay attention. So, like a lot of the people who vote kind of follow politics. Maybe like once a week they read the news or something like that. They get kind of a gist from their friends and family of like what's going on, and then they vote straight Democrat or straight Republican every time. So we're gonna see more fuckery with that sort of angle. Like I can't remember what the name of it is, but like the reason that the squad, as they're called, like the Elon, Omar, AOC, and then whatever the fuck the other three names of those people are or whatever, they have these PACs behind them. They were funded by like the Young Turks and like George Soros was behind it. But like you're gonna see more pushes in local and state level shit. Like they did it in the federal government already, and now they're gonna do it to you locally. And like because people are just simply not paying attention to who they're putting a check next to. Like well that guy's a Democrat, so I'm voting for him. Like that guy's a Republican. I don't really know anything about his policies or like his record or like his platform, but he's a Republican, so it'll probably be fine. Like that's where we're really gonna get our shit rammed in.
Yeah. And so when I
There's
think
there's simply too much money involved when it comes to the DNC or the GOP to actually beat them. And that was like my big hope following this election. I don't think it's gonna happen, but you're starting to see every year the Libertarian Party gets more votes for a third party candidate than the previous year. So like that sort of uprising is starting to bubble up. So I'm hoping that after this, the Libertarian Party will be able to like get their shit together and put forward a real candidate.
you make a point that the primary two parties are too much money, too established, and it's a problem. But and there's plenty of conversation. There always has been about the third party, about libertarianism, and honestly, my thought is that we should focus more on revitalizing or evolving the existing parties and getting libertarian candidates into there, or getting like
There's no hope for that, right? Like Ron Paul, is a good conservative. I think he's a real traditionalist and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they get funded by people who aren't you, right? Like I don't think we have enough on the ground people who are willing to actually support a legitimate run for any real office. Like these people try to like go door to door and hand out some flyers and stuff like that, but it's all out of their own pocket. Comes to like the GOP or the DNC, you got Walmart behind you, you have Amazon behind you, you have Hobby Lobby behind you, you have all of these like super PACs and everything. Like you can't be competitive with it. Like 99% of the time when somebody runs for office, it's the person who spends the most money who wins.
yeah. But I think that there's something to be said about like technology and also crowdfunding. Like that's like you think about it like
That's what we get fucked too, because the second you start speaking out against the overarching narrative, the overarching agenda is when you get kicked the fuck off of all of those platforms.
so what's funny then is like now the discussion has gotten so deep, so it's like okay, we can't get into politics because it's rigged by money. We can't do anything about money because the money pays the elections, and then like it's such a control, like they control every aspect of it, and so like you said, they cut your funding. So we're at the level of talking about like crypto and shit like that. Like, oh, like then there's people who are evangelical about that shit. Like it is about the money. Follow the money, and it's about the technology behind the money, and that perhaps like cryptocurrency could be the savior in that respect.
I personally believe the only real option that we have is, it's going to get really, 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 really shitty in this country, probably for a couple of decades. And that's when we're actually going to be able to do something. When everybody like takes a look around them and they say like, what the fuck happened to us? And they get violent and they get angry and they overthrow the government. At this point, I feel like our country's too corrupted. Our constitution doesn't mean anything to anybody anymore.
Well, my thing is like, I think there's
It's
always
dumb,
this like,
but everybody needs to wake up and realize that.
there's always this idealization of like a takeover, but I don't think it could happen, and if it does happen, it's probably not even for the best because it's going to create a lot of like unstable power vacuums. But
It's not about whether or not it could happen. It's like, do you actually believe in the shit that you say? Do you actually stand for like what you think things should be like, right? Like, we could all uprise today and all get slaughtered by like, the military moves in or something like that, right? But like if you're not willing to die for what you say or what you believe in, then it's not really worth much, is it? If you're going to continually bend over and just let them keep fucking you with the same system that they've been fucking us with my entire life, nothing's going to change. Like, no matter who wins, right? Like, it's the same agenda. Either you get it at warp speed or you get it at a trickle. That's like your option. Do you want blue or do you want red fucking?
So my thing is like, it's one thing to be willing to die for a cause, and it's another thing to know when you need to actually do that, because there's plenty of tact to be had, and there's plenty to be said for like living a full life fighting the system versus going out there and doing something dumb, like like that's.
And that's why I keep saying I'm not advocating for violence, right? Like I'm advocating for people to just, in your general life and on a daily basis, when you see something you don't like, say something about it, right?
Yeah,
Say something about it.
That's
the
the
shit
takeaway,
that they
yeah.
had over in the UK where everybody's marching against these lockdowns and shit. They did not need to get violent, but they're heard. So many people don't like that. And like if you don't listen to me, I might have to do something crazy.
Yeah.
I want to, and I don't think that they'll have to. I think they will be listened to. If everybody stood up and finally said, we're done with this bullshit that you're doing, they'd listen, because they'd have to. They wouldn't have an alternative. That they'd know exactly what that means when that many people show up. That's why, like with BLM going around burning everything down and being all violent and shit, things are changing. They're getting what they want. But I don't think we need to get that violent about it. Just show up, be there.
Yeah.
Let them know, like, I'm not with this. When you don't say anything, it's consent.
Yeah. And it's a big thing to be said too about the gradual process, about like you said, like in your daily life, like look for efforts to say something or to have a conversation or to share a meme or like like something, and also like it's about having platforms for that conversation to be had. Whenever people aren't being heard, and they're not seeing any results of their thoughts, they don't feel like they're being represented. That's whenever shit gets worse, and it doesn't have to come to that if we proactively get in front of it.
Well, that was the entire reason we had an American Revolution in the first place. Like, you're taking 1/5 of my paycheck in this state, and I don't feel like anybody cares what I think.
Yeah.
when enough people are in that mindset, that's when shit starts to happen.
Yeah. And that's what it's about. It's about just gradually like networking, gradually having those conversations, pushing those ideas, like getting more people involved, and like that's what I constantly come back to is like let's rally people, like let's build community, let's get people on board with these ideas, and that's like that's what brings us here today is just to continue doing that, you know.
Yeah, no, that's really all you can do. And it's really helpful because like a lot of people really feel like they can't express themselves politically these days. Like Democrats are the only people who report like, yes, in an online space I feel like I can say whatever it is I want.
Yeah.
But a lot of these like, even moderate or, right wing, not necessarily like extremist views, they don't feel safe expressing those, right? Like I saw a guy with a Trump bumper sticker and like we have a 60%, can't speak English Mexican in our workplace, and I was like, dude, aren't you worried that somebody's gonna slash your tires or some shit?
Yeah.
Like, well, we have cameras, but like that is a legitimate concern for a lot of people. They don't want to put a Trump sign in their yard because like it'll get stolen or like a mom might show up or like they'll get their shit posted online and they'll get fired, right? Like they don't feel like they can talk. Like what we need to do is create an environment where people feel like they're safe expressing their opinions
Yep.
regardless of what they are.
And that's what I was having a conversation with another friend. We were considering starting a podcast. Like it was like more themed around that in general, and that's what the first episode was going to be about. Was like, uh, you know, you can't say that was going to be the theme. Like really, really focusing on like this cultural climate and this like whole thought police bullshit and all the doxing and all the you can't say this and like that's what we should really, really use this platform for is the shit that we can't say on Facebook that constantly gets thrown around and just reiterating some of the shit that we can say. And really, like I said, like that guy who messaged me today or this morning and was just like, dude, I love what you're posting, but like I just wanted to reach out and say that and stuff like that, but I can't like it because it's public and I might get in trouble. And I'm just like, that's what we're here for. Like we're here to be the leaders. We're here to make people feel like it's people are feeling the same things that we're feeling, but like you said, they're afraid. They're afraid to say anything. They're afraid to speak up about it, and yeah. So that's what I want to continue to be is just like continue to be a force of kind of like sharing the righteous ideas or really just having the conversation, just having the conversation.
The terrifying alternative to that is like you keep shutting people down, you keep not allowing people to have a conversation, and like they're going to hold these ideas and opinions that really need to be held up to public scrutiny. They need to be able to be pointed out for what they are and like broken down and like explained to these people like why that's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like when you don't let somebody express themselves, like those ideas don't go anywhere. They're just in their own heads and they get worse and worse and worse, and that's where you get extremists from. That's where you get violent revolutionaries.
Yeah. It really this whole conversation like is like really making me realize like how many like I think that's a big reason that keeps other people from like really wanting to get on podcasts and do stuff like that is, and even just to post is they do feel so afraid. Like they just people are it's so much fear out there. And really like it's got a lot of people too like they're afraid to even be associated with me. There's so many people that have like unfriended or stuff because they felt pressured by their friends or were just so it's just fear because that's the main tactic of the left and of like the enemy and of it's just fear. It's all about
something I don't like, I will hurt you.
yeah.
One way or another, I will hurt you because I don't like what you said.
That's what we need more of, man. Like of course, and so I think there's like two components of this. You've got some like older conservatives that are totally on board with this that are just like fuck you guys, like they know, but at the same time they also are having a hard time like picking up with the new waves, interfacing with the new generations, understanding the technology. So that's really one way that we can really help with them. And then when it comes to our generation or the younger generations, we need to be that force of like it's okay to be like to have these like conservative beliefs or right-wing beliefs or just like good just your own beliefs that aren't part of the narrative. And so that's those are two frontiers that I really want to like continue to interface with.
Yeah, it's just really hard to be heard these days.
Yeah.
Really difficult to get heard. I don't know exactly what to do, but at least having conversations, at least like presenting this sort of concept, this way of thinking to other people it's a start.
Yeah. And that's what it's about. We just want to continue to have more conversations. I'm just hoping that the more we were talking about like weren't we talking about like consistency? Yeah, we were. Like, when you called me yesterday, we were talking about like just consistently putting out episodes is going to make people feel like Yeah, this is the thing. Like this is a more foundational thing that's consistent, and they're on. I have an idea for what they believe, and hopefully that builds more courage, and we can get more people on here and stuff like that, and hopefully maybe even get some people with like get some leftists on here to like actually talk. That's one thing that's really big. Like people are more than willing to spout their ideas like on 4chan or on like Facebook or with all these accounts and but like who is willing to get on here and have a conversation or like it really is like a call like step the fuck up, who wants to do it. And
What
so
I would do is, if I were you, join one of the walk away movements, like because this year especially, we're seeing a lot of Democrats actually like waking up to the fact that like the DNC as a whole has like moved to the radical left or whatever, and like they're saying they're walking away. They're not necessarily Republicans now. A lot of them say I'm not a Republican, I'm moderate, right? Like that's most rational people. Most rational people are moderate. They're centrists. They see things that they like about the right, they see things that they like about the left, and they try to like put them together and like make things work. That's what our country was founded upon doing, was compromising by taking these two very divergent ways of like living, doing
yeah.
life, and like making that go through. And that's why we've been so successful. So you have a lot of moderate people who are starting to realize like neither party actually speaks for me. Like I'd get in touch with that. Like try to talk to some people from the walk away movement.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna keep trying to post and network and get some more perspectives and stuff like that, and I think that'd be like a good kind of next step. But yeah, for now, this is good to keep this ball rolling. I think we've hit some good points today and kept that same energy going, and you know we're doing the
Oh
good.
yeah, we'll do another one next Sunday. You can probably try to find some people to talk to. It'd be have you seen New World Next Week? Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So he's this guy James Corbett. He has like a really really bulky set of documentaries that he's made over the years. He's like got a conspiratorial sort of bent to him. Like he really deep dives into a lot of things. But I would like to see us go in sort of that direction.
Yeah.
Every Sunday we get on, we'll pull up 3 news stories each, and we'll like really just talk about them. We'll hammer them home. Like this is the article. This is what it had to say, and like here's what's really behind that.
Yeah, I do like that. I like the idea of like preparation and like now that we've, the more consistently we do it, the more we can, dig deeper or take these different threads. Because like, if we only do it every now and then, it's just about, oh, we got to touch base, we got to talk about the same kind of like political narratives and like where that's going. And then, but yeah, the more we do it, the more we can like really go in different directions and take deeper dives. So that's a challenge for next
Don't
week.
get me wrong. I like having these very like general conversations that have like sort of philosophical take to them, but like like a current thing that people like will want to tune into because it's like, okay, well, what the fuck happened this week? Like what really happened this week?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll start thinking about that. Start collecting some ideas, and we'll go from there. And maybe we could even like I'm down to even maybe shoot for more frequent like biweekly and shit like that. So we'll see how it develops and go from there.
No, like the big thing is going to be like staying in touch. Then though is like constant communication about like shit.
Yeah, and that's a challenge to myself. I do get in the habit of being like very hermetic and stuff like that, and like not really putting effort in. But like I think it is like a challenge for me, and I do feel like called to like really keep the narrative going, uh, keep building the
If you want
communities.
this to be successful, you're going to have to treat it like a job.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the podcast is definitely something a challenge that I'm willing to step up to. I have a lot of projects, a lot of ideas, but a podcast is definitely like I think it's a good platform. So we'll see how it
No,
develops.
I totally agree, but like you heard me. You heard what I said. It's gonna have to be a job. Like if you really want this to get off the ground, we're gonna have to treat it like a job and like really, really just do it.
Sounds like a plan, dude. Let's see here. So we're getting closer to an hour. I may go ahead and cut it off real quick.
That's fine with me. I was ready to be done too. I gotta go get cigarettes.
More cigs. Keep smoking. Smoke.
I kill myself.
All right,
I
man.
kill myself slow. All right, I'll talk to you later.
We'll see you. Peace.